Hey everyone, welcome back to a new episode of In the Cup. And as you all can see, I am missing my co host Amanda this week. She is actually in New York City for a work trip. But I will say it's a full circle moment that Amanda is in New York this week. When we started our coverage of the World Cup a month and a half ago, which is wild to say, Amanda was in New York City for the opening weekend of the World Cup, and the Knicks were in the NBA Finals. So again, I'll say we've come full circle with our World Cup coverage and Amanda being in New York this week. But I want to start by congratulating the Washington Spirit and Gotham FC within the NWSL. They set a record over 42,000 fans at Citi Field for their match last week, which is the biggest women's sporting event in New York City. So congratulations to the Washington Spirit and Gotham FC for setting that record. And I'll say that I think at least in the United States, women have set the bar in the soccer world. I think our women's national team and just all of the publicity and the viewership and visibility that women's soccer gets in the United States, I think has surpassed the men's. Maybe with this World Cup, it'll be a little bit more elevated, but I feel like our lady soccer players have been leading the way on that front. So again, congratulations to the Spirit and Gotham for setting that record. It's an amazing achievement in a city like New York City. Getting into our World Cup coverage, lots of drama. How could we end the World Cup without drama? We'll start with the semis. So the first game last week was England and Argentina, and there is no lack of bad blood between these two teams. They have a political history, they have a World Cup history, so tensions were high going into this game, and England led 1-0. I think they scored in the second half in the 55th minute, and then they kind of went defensive, which they have done most of the tournament. But it backfired in this instance. I think there was a lot of criticism after for them being more defensive, not being aggressive, and just kind of playing not to lose rather than to win. But Argentina did come back and score 2 additional goals to eventually win that match. There was, of course, a controversial non-red card call with Enzo Fernandez hitting the back of one of the English players in the first half. And again, on the political front, at the end, the Argentina players held up a banner that said, Las Malvinas son Argentinas, which means the Falklands are Argentine. And if you don't know the history of the Falklands, technically they are British territory. Argentina does claim the islands to be theirs, so it's been a high point of political tension between the two nations. But per FIFA rules, you're not allowed to have any political signs or symbolism and whatnot. After the match, FIFA did recognize and said that they were aware, but they weren't going to penalize Argentina until after the World Cup. I haven't seen anything come of it yet, but we'll see. But we know there has been some slight favoritism towards the Argentinian team. So we'll see if any of that comes to fruition. But unfortunately, there's been a lot of negative press against Argentina. I don't know all of the history of Argentina and its people, so I can't comment on it too much, but I'll say there's definitely some of that going on in our country as well. So for us to say Argentina is a bad country, I think is a little extreme. I'm sure just as there are in the United States, there are wonderful, nice people in Argentina as well. So we can't blanket the whole country. But again, I can't really say. I don't know too much of the history other than kind of what I've learned over the last month or so. Again, the match ended in 2-1. Argentina, as we all know, made it to the finals. The second semifinal game was Spain versus France, which Spain won 2-0, which surprised a lot of people, although they were favored to win the World Cup when this started. Spain was just kind of playing and going under the radar. I think they only had one allowed goal throughout the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. But Spain was a favorite to win the World Cup. They won the Euros 2 years ago. So I don't think it was much of a surprise. I think a lot of people were hoping that France would put up more of a fight. But in the end, Spain won. So we had Spain and Argentina set for the final. But in the World Cup, there is a third place match. And a lot of American viewers were kind of making fun of it like a participation trophy. But they've always had a third place, and third place team gets $29 million to their federation. So there's still a lot to play for. The Golden Boot was still on the table, and it was a great match. It was the highest scoring match of the tournament. It ended 6-4. England beat France, and Saka had a hat trick. Jude scored the most World Cup goals ever for an English player. He actually had the chance to do it earlier with the penalty kick, but he let Saka take the PK so that he could get the hat trick, and then Jude ended up scoring that sixth goal of the match. England led 4-0 at the half, and France came back to score 4 goals towards that final score, which I think probably gave English fans a little bit of PTSD from the previous match, but England held on and they were able to win that match. Mbappe scored his 21st and 22nd World Cup goals to overtake Messi, and as we know, he won the Golden Boot for the World Cup. And the French coach, the French coach, manager, they call them managers. I think in the beginning, Mbappe posted that they were going to obviously play their hearts out as they would, but this was their manager's last FIFA match. So I think they were going in hoping to win. Obviously, we know that they didn't. But Zidane, who is a very famous French player, he helped France win the World Cup in 1998. He was named as France's next coach or manager. So I think everyone, especially if you're a French fan, looking forward to that. Those games set the stage for our final FIFA match, which was Spain versus Argentina. We had the opening ceremony at MetLife, or New York, New Jersey Stadium. Jennifer Hudson sang the national anthem, and last week we were laughing about how we didn't know where Carlos Alcaraz is. Well, we found him. He was there at the opening ceremony. He actually opened the Louis Vuitton case that held the World Cup trophy, so he was there to introduce that. And Tom Cruise did a special intro for the match. And then prior to the match, I don't know if you all saw this photo circulating of Messi and a 5-month-old Lamine Yamal, but a lot of people thought that the photo was AI, but in fact, it was not AI. There's an interesting story behind it. So Messi played most of his career with Barcelona, and he was with Barcelona at the time, and the team was doing a raffle to support UNICEF, where the winner of the raffle got to go to Barcelona Stadium, take a photo with a player, and Lamine's family lived in a town nearby the stadium, and his mom actually won that raffle. So she brought baby Lamine to the stadium, and that's how this photo of Messi and Lamine exists. And Lamine actually now plays for Barcelona. He wears the number 10 like Messi did. He joined the team 2 years after Messi left in 2021. I think Messi went to PSG after, and as we all know, he plays for Inter Miami now. But yeah, not everything is AI, people, but it is kind of a crazy generational photo that exists, and now they're playing on the biggest stage in the world. So we also had a halftime show, which was for European fans, not well received. They're used to just having their normal, soccer commentary during halftime. They didn't like how it was going to prolong the match. And the match end to end, I think, went at least 3 hours with the overtime. But we had Madonna opening it up, Justin Bieber, BTS, Shakira did her World Cup song. And I will say, obviously, being an American and watching NFL halftime shows, it wasn't my favorite. But I think there was a lot of good production, and the only thing I didn't love was Justin Bieber. I love the song Everything Hallelujah, but for that moment when you came off of Madonna and BTS doing very upbeat songs, and then Justin Bieber doing an acoustic, it kind of slowed down the momentum, but he did good. It is what it is. Ted Lasso or Jason Sudeikis and Beard introduced him, so that was a little nice play, and there were some soccer legends there, the Muppets randomly. So that was the halftime show. There was not actually a lot of action. There was action, but not a lot of action in this match. I think Spain had like 20 plus shots on goal, and Argentina didn't have any. Messi was basically a non-factor. As I mentioned, they went into extra time, and that's when Ferran Torres scored the 1 goal for Spain. They also had 2 disallowed goals, one for a foul, which was an obvious foul. It was unintentional, but one of the Spanish players stepped on the foot of an Argentinian player, so that one was disallowed. And then there was another one, it was a breakaway, but that one was, I think he was offsides by a shoulder that they showed in the replay. And for those who have not enjoyed, like myself, Argentina's very aggressive, provocative playing, Enzo Fernandez got a red card. He actually got a yellow and then a second yellow. 1 + 1 yellow equals a red. And he got kicked out of the game. So Argentina was down to 10. And I was very happy to see him get that red card because he's just been an aggravator basically the whole tournament, especially the last 2 matches. So I appreciated that he finally got called out on his BS. So they were down to 10 in the overage time. Argentina, they had some shot. I think they mentioned that Argentina hadn't scored most of their goals until after the 75th minute in every match that they've played in. So, I was sitting a little uneasy, obviously rooting for Spain, thinking that Argentina could make a run. And there were some close calls towards the end. But in the end, Spain pulled it off. They won 1-0. And only 3 teams, including Spain in 2008, 2010, have won the Euros and then the World Cup. So great on Spain. Again, I mentioned they were actually the favorites going into the tournament. So it shouldn't be really a surprise to anyone. And on the Argentina train, their players were starting fights after the match when it was over. And at that point, I was just like, guys, let it go. You lost. Show some sportsmanship. But, and I read a story that I think they turned their backs or something when Spain got their gold medals. So unfortunately, not a great look for some of the Argentinian players. And a lot of them I think a handful of them play for English clubs. And when they beat England in the semifinals, each of the clubs posted the Argentinian player from their club who won that match. And there was outrage, at least on soccer Twitter, from English fans saying that the team should take it down, specifically Chelsea. I feel like the other teams left theirs up, but Enzo Fernandez plays for Chelsea. He was one of the ones, again, an aggravator who held up that sign about the Falklands after the match. So there are calls for Chelsea to terminate his contract. I don't know if they will. I did see some English fans saying that, it's not warranted. They like him on the team. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Enzo and his friends and Argentina for all of the antics that they pulled during this World Cup. But Spain's goalie got the Golden Glove Award. The Golden Ball went to Rodri, their captain. And Spain's coach is the oldest to win a World Cup final. And we mentioned earlier that Mbappe got the Golden Boot. So I think all in all, for all its drama and its controversies, the World Cup really brought the world together for a month and a half. There was a lot of good and fun that came out of it. We all learned the Viking Bro, which everyone did throughout the United States. They were doing it at other tournaments, like golf tournament. We had bagpipes in Boston and traffic cones on the statues. And we got to see how others view our country. And we mentioned, I think, in one of the first episodes where we covered the World Cup, that a lot of people outside the United States are seeing a lot of negativity about our country right now for, reasons that we all know of. But we got to see a lot of positive things that people from outside of the U.S. saw when they came to the United States. We had our friend Freddie, who was traveling through the United States. People got a new appreciation for ranch and free refills and Target and Costco. So it was kind of cool to see that. And one of the highlights, Cape Verde, which, small little country off the coast of Western Africa, little known country with less than 1 million people, put its name in the map. And their goalie, I think, has a lot of new opportunities that may be afforded to him moving forward in terms of his soccer career. And I think as Americans who don't follow soccer as much, there are a lot of us, we learned the game of soccer and we learned what this beautiful game is all about. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy. I will not say I know all of the rules of soccer, but I will say I know a lot more than I did a month and a half ago. So now I just have to figure out which team I'm going to support moving forward. So if anyone has any recommendations, let me know. Okay, now to the golf updates. The Open Championship, the last major of the year, was played over the weekend, and your champion golfer of the year is Fox. He wins $3.2 million, the gold medal, and the claret jug, which I think he gets to take, and then he'll have to bring it back to St. Andrews, where it'll be hosted next year, the old course, St. Andrews. And Ryan Fox has a cool story. If you are someone who's wondering if they can pick up golf later in life, Ryan Fox is definitely your story. He didn't start playing golf until he was 13, and I don't think he started playing professionally until he was maybe 17 or 18. And he didn't get his tour card until 2023, which was only a few years ago. He played on the European Tour and I think the Australian Tour, and he got his first PGA Tour wins last year at Myrtle Beach, and then he won the RPC Canadian in a playoff against Sam Burns, which ironically, we'll get to that when we get to more of the details of the tournament. And his dad actually played rugby for 8 years on the New Zealand All Blacks team, which is, I think, the best rugby team in the world. And they're known for doing their haka in the beginning of every match, which is really cool. But Ryan Fox won with a birdie putt on 18, which was the second toughest playing hole on Sunday. It only had 4 birdies the whole day. So he needed that birdie to win, or he would go into a playoff with Cam Young. I actually thought at first that it wasn't going to go in. It was kind of wiggling down the line, and it looked like it was going to go out the left side of the cup, but it trickled in and he won. His family wasn't there. They were in Florida, but he called his wife and his kids after, and he said in his press conference that his kids were telling him to bring home a trophy, and dad's bringing home a trophy, kids. So really cool story. And there were a lot of storylines too. As we mentioned, Cam Young finished his rounds with the 64. He was a clubhouse leader, and he waited about 2.5 hours to see if there was going to be a potential playoff. And as we know, he had to wait until that last birdie putt, and he was warming up, and you didn't see too much coverage of it, but I saw a video of him kind of finding out the news, and definitely a bummer. Cam will definitely get that major soon. He is just knocking out the door. I mentioned Sam Burns. He was one of the ones who shot at 62 earlier in the tournament. He started Sunday with the lead at 10 under, but he ended up bogeying 3 holes on the front 9, so that dipped him into 8 under. And I think Michael Kim said it on Twitter that links golf in this course particular, it's hard to play catch up because the fairways are narrow, you have the pot bunkers, you have the fescue. So it's definitely a course that you want to play from ahead and not chase. So I think when Sam lost that lead, it was definitely hard to pick up those strokes that he lost just because of the nature of links golf. And I was looking at it again, the fairways are very narrow. So even if you don't do like a hard slice or whatnot, even if your ball drifts and you end up in fescue, as we will talk about Bryson in a bit, but anything off of the fairway is going to be tough. Luckily, by the last day, a lot of the fescue was trampled on. But again, the fairway bunkers, there's bunkers all along the fairway. They're deep. If you end up on like one of the walls of the bunker, very hard to get out of. The bunker, the greenside bunker on 14 was, I think, the most diabolical bunker of the weekend. Anyone who got stuck in that was faced with an extreme challenge to get it out. I think I would have probably given up if I ended up in one of those bunkers. We also had Siwoo Kim, who kind of snuck into the leaderboard. He was in second place going in, and he would have been the first Asian-born golfer to win the Open Championship. He did okay on the front 9 and then kind of started to lose it on the back 9 again. The course is just super tough. And then, as we mentioned, Ryan got that birdie on 18 to win, and a lot of people are saying, like, if you look back at the major winners, other than Rory, with Wyndham and with Ryan, a lot of people are saying that the winners this year are kind of lackluster. But if you're a golf fan and you're watching this last round of the Open, if you were watching the final round of the US Open, that was great golf. And it might not be the Scottie Schefflers and, some of the favorites. As we know, Wyndham got a lot of negativity towards his win. But if you're a fan of the game and you love watching golf, I'll say that the final rounds of these majors this year were great watches. So I'm hoping that everyone can appreciate the golf, whether or not it's, that big name that you want to win. The Open, kind of like FIFA, did not go up without its controversy as well. The biggest one of the weekend was Bryson DeChambeau, and before the tournament started, there were comments that were made from Brandel Chambly and Nick Faldo, I think maybe was either right before the tournament started or in the first 2 rounds. Brandel had made a comment about Bryson not wanting to win against the best in the world, but he was trying to beat the best YouTube golfers. Nick Faldo said that he didn't play with any strategy. So when Bryson had that controversial ruling on the 5th hole on Friday, where he hit into the fescue, he went to find his ball, and it looks like on the replay, he stepped down on the fescue to improve the plane of his swing, which you're not allowed to do. It kind of added to that narrative that was already put into viewers' minds, into the press. It probably would have received its own, it probably would have been highlighted too, and people would have had their thoughts. But I think just those comments from the beginning of the tournament escalated the narrative. And I don't know. I can't say if Bryson did it on purpose or not. Hopefully he didn't. Part of me says it was unintentional. Part of me is like, you're a professional golfer. You know what you're doing. And when they interviewed players, American players and international players, I think the American players gave him more of the benefit of the doubt. A couple of them even said they didn't agree with the ruling. And then you had the international players, mainly Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry, saying the rules are the rules. They made the right decision. So it seemed like it was very polarizing. And Rory, I think, made the boldest comments. He said he's not fond of Bryson. He didn't say that he did it intentionally. He said that he hopes it was just, mindless, careless error. But I think Rory's also in his, I don't give a crap era. He will just say what's on his mind. He did say Bryson was performative and was kind of playing that up. So, I don't know. So much drama amongst the golfers. Bryson left the day saying that he didn't know, he said he wasn't going to play the next day. I think a lot of people thought that held up the tee times, but the R&A said that solely because of the time it took to determine the ruling, and then for the recorders to get all the scores and stuff, that's what pushed the tee times. I don't think they released the tee times until 11 o'clock on Friday night local time. Even players like Justin Thomas were tweeting about it. Xander Schauffele made a comment in his press conference saying he didn't know why the tee times are taking so long to get out, but it wasn't because Bryson said he didn't know if he was going to play. It was because of the length of the process. And a lot of people were saying too, if it was Scottie, which we'll get to later, or anyone else, the R&A probably would have let it go. But I forget who it was who said it in a press conference, but they said that Bryson is one of those players who's always on TV. And I still don't know how the R&A came to think about he did this on 5, who kind of notified them or made them aware, or maybe they knew all along because Bryson didn't find out until after his round, obviously. But it's true, if I think this player was I'm not on TV as much, so if I would have done it, it might not have been called out the way it did, but because Bryson is on TV almost every shot, it's more noticeable and people pick up on it. So I don't know. Again, no confirmation as to who alerted the R&A at what point they decided to review it. But at the end of the day, they determined that Bryson did improve his swing plane, and he was assessed a two-shot penalty, which dropped him 3 shots back of the lead. And then he just kind of never recovered again. Hard to chase. He ended at 4 under, tied for 14th. On the flip side of that, going to Scottie actually had a controversial ruling on the 17th hole on Sunday. He hit his shot into the grandstands, which is deemed as a TIO, temporary immovable obstruction, and he ended up getting he was given free relief. They didn't, at the time, within the 3 minutes you're allowed to find the ball, they hadn't found the ball, but there were a number of people saying that they saw it drop into this area. So the R&A ended up giving him that free relief, which, even though he did hit a provisional, they gave him free relief, and that eventually set up a birdie on that hole. He came up just shy. I think he ended up tying for 4th place at an 8 under. But a lot of people, again, are saying since it was Scottie, he got a more favorable ruling than Bryson did. But again, I think the TIO in that case, I'm not sure if it's a local rule or if it's across the board in terms of hitting into the grandstands. I'll have to look look into that. But yeah, I mean, I can't say, I think we have to rely on what we're given for Bryson's. There was obviously a lot of, again, camera coverage of how we kind of stomped back into the fescue. And I could also say that that's just how Bryson walks. Like if you see him swing, or even if you watch him putt, it's kind of like Hulk smash. Like he's just like, muscle the ball, which again, on these links courses, I think that when I was talking about playing smart golf, these links courses, you really have to play the smart shots. Like you can't just power the ball. Yes, there are holes where you can, pipe a driver, 300 yards or whatever. I think Rory drove the green a couple of times, but you have to be very accurate. And even if you hit it far down the fairway, if it dips in any such way into a fairway bunker, like you're stuck. So I think links golf is really a true test, and you really have to play smart shots. But Scottie didn't win, so it wasn't as controversial as it probably could have been if he did win. And then we have Sam Burns, who again came so close, one shot off the win. Sam actually almost didn't play the Open. His daughter, Belle, was due Tuesday of the Open, but she was born early on July 3rd. And if you think back to the U.S. Open, where he was so close to getting into that playoff with Wyndham Clark, you think about it, and I think that's why he was a little bit more devastated with that result, other than it being on Father's Day, and his dad was there at Shinnecock to watch him. But he thought that was going to be his last major of the year. So again, in hindsight, now knowing that he wasn't supposed to play the Open, that just makes the U.S. Open reaction a little bit more real, and you get more of that perspective. But his daughter was born early, and his agent actually kept his name in the pool just in case. And so Belle was born early, and Sam's wife, Caroline, actually encouraged him to go and play. His parents stayed with his wife and his kids to help take care of them. And then his older brother, I think his name is Chase, joined him at the Open. So he did have some family with him, but that would have been kind of a crazy story if Sam went on to win. And similar to Cam Young, he's knocking on the door. Like he was one shot off of this one shot off the U.S. Open at Shinnecock. He had the 54-hole lead at Oakmont last year and lost it on Sunday. So, I think Sam's time is coming. And they brought up Brandel brought up a good point during his broadcast. Sam and Scottie Scheffler are really good friends. And Brandel was saying it's been beneficial for Sam to play a lot of rounds with Scottie, to be his friend and kind of see, what it's like to be in contention and play on a final day of a major. And at first I was like, well, Sam's a great player. Like I wouldn't give all the credit to Scottie. But thinking about it, a lot of people do say if you want to get better at golf, play with people that are better than you. And I think that holds true with a lot of things. Like you always want to learn from people who have done it well, who have played the game well, who know in corporate world, who know the business, things like that. And when I first moved to San Diego, within the first year, I met my friend Nicole, who I play a lot with here. And Nicole's way better than me. And I think through osmosis, I picked up a lot of things, just like her mannerisms, how she prepares, her routine and things like that. So I'll agree with Brandel on this one that probably playing with Scottie and being Scottie's friend and getting that perspective did help, because I was kind of a product of that learning. And I've gotten a lot more comfortable with my game. So now I'm okay going out and just signing up as a single and playing. And I've played with a variety of different people. From really good golfers to average ones to ones that think they're really good and hit from the tips, which they shouldn't. But I'll agree with Brandel on that one, that being around people who have good habits, have good work ethic, play the game well, definitely rubs off on you. So between on Sunday, between the World Cup final and the end of the Open, it was a great way to end, again, this World Cup and the last major of the year. So with that coming up, I mentioned it last week, but I spoke in air, but the ISPS Honda Women's Scottish Open is this weekend, and it's right before the last major of the LPGA Tour season, which is the AIG. So that one is this weekend, and I'm kind of glad that I was wrong, because I don't know if I could have taken another tournament because there was too much going on with everything else. So the women are back in action this week at the Scottish Open, and the PGA Tour comes back to the States. They're playing the 3 Open in Minnesota at TPC Twin Cities. And Kurt Kitayama was last year's winner. So we are coming towards the end of the summer, to the end of some of the big tournaments. In August, we'll have the FedEx Cup, and then in September, we'll have the Solheim and the President's Cup. And then that starts the fall series. So there's still a lot of golf to be played, but we've kind of hit almost the end of kind of the major tournaments for the men and the women. So those are the updates for today. I hope you all enjoyed the World Cup. I'm a little bummed that it's over, but also a lot of drama. And I think maybe it's okay that there's 4 years in between. The next World Cup, as we mentioned, is in Portugal, Spain, and Morocco. So that'll be kind of cool. I love all of those countries. I haven't been to Morocco yet, but it's on my bucket list. And more golf next week in Minnesota and in Scotland at Dundonald. So I hope all of you have a great week. Amanda will be back with us soon, and then we're going to take a little break for summer as well. So thank you for joining me this week, and we'll see you all next week. Have a good one. Bye.